Hey guys, Mr. Yaisley here. So we're on to lesson number 14, which is all about writing the equation of a perpendicular line. So this is going to be somewhat similar to what we talked about in terms of writing the equation of a parallel line. But there is a slight difference. So let's talk about where that difference is. And it really happens in the second step of this. Before we had kind of 4 steps, which was find the slope, use the point given, plug that information in, solve for the new y-intercept that you needed, and then plug that in for those 2 pieces of information, the y-intercept and the slope, in to write your new equation, right? Where it's going to be a little different is when we're writing the equation of a perpendicular line, the first thing we need to do is determine the slope of the line that they give us. So whether we have to use slope formula, we have to use the visual and go from the left point to the right point, or we just look at the equation of the line, whatever it is, we've got to identify the slope first. Once we have the slope, we know that if these are perpendicular lines, that the slope of the perpendicular line is going to be the negative reciprocal. So we would then flip that slope, so flip the fraction, and change its sign, all right? And change its sign to create the slope of the new perpendicular line. So we'd take the slope that we know of the first line, we'd switch, if it was positive, we'd switch it to negative, and then we would flip the fraction upside down. This would give us our new slope, right? Then we would plug that new slope, right, and the point xy into the slope-intercept form. So they would go, y would go here, the slope would go there, and x would go there, which would leave us with just b. We would then solve for the b, the y-intercept, right? And then once we've figured out what b is, then we can use the slope and the y-intercept to find our new equation by plugging them in for the y and for the b. And then for the m and for the b. And then the y and the x would stay as they are. So this is really the same process that we did for parallel lines when writing the equation, right? The only difference is that changing of that slope. We've got to then create that negative reciprocal of the slope, and then we can figure out the rest of the information. All right, well, that's all we're going to talk about in Lesson 14. We're then going to put this process into use and some examples in Lesson 15. But if you have any additional questions, please let me know. Otherwise, continue on in the chapter.